Hi, I'm Cynthia Brooks from Fire and Glory International Ministries, and I'm here today to just come before you for a little bit, just to talk about the times that we are living in again, and to talk about the effect that this shutdown is having on the individual lives. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about the reality of living without relationships that we're used to living with. And I want to turn to Job 2, verse 11. And in Job 2, verse 11, it reads, "Now when Job's three friends heard of all this adversity that had come upon him, each one came from his own place: Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come and mourn with him and to comfort him." So Job had lost his children, lost everything he had, everything. I mean, he had one trial after another that was hitting. And the last trial he dealt with was losing his family. All of his children died. And he lost his property, he lost his flock, he lost everything but his wife. And so his friends got together, made an appointment and said, let's come together and let's go and comfort our friends. And it is natural for them to come and comfort a friend. And I saw this a little bit when I was in Africa recently with my dear friend, Sherry Banks. She's my assistant, and we travel out of the country together on missions trips. And when we were riding with one of the pastors in Africa, we saw these people going down the road, and we asked our driver what was going on, because we just a whole lot of people. And he said someone died, and they were going to comfort this family who had lost a loved one. And I thought about, wow, that is amazing. I mean, it was just a lot of people going to comfort. And I thought about back when I was a child, when someone died, how the neighbors used to come together and come to a person's house. And we don't see it like that too much anymore. But at this time, in this season where we live right now, you can't do that, because we're in a time now that with this social distancing, you can come to a person's house and people come and gather. Many people have lost loved ones. I've gotten several calls from people who have lost their loved ones during this virus, and they can't come together. Their families can't even come together. They can't get all their loved ones because you can only bring 10 people. And of course, in a family, there are more than 10 people. So they just can't come together and see their loved ones, or if they're sick in a hospital. And this is not good. This has to take a terrible effect on the lives of those who are grieving. And so I want to talk about this thing that we're in right now, where we can't come together and comfort, since God called us to be relational, people that touch one another, people that hug, people that come together. One of the things that I noticed here in America, the way we greet generally is either by shaking hands or by hugging. But in Africa and in third world nations where we have traveled, they greet one another. Even in parts of Europe, they greet one another with kiss. They kiss on the cheek and they hug. And so that's just a natural way of greeting. But here we find globally now, no one, not even in those areas, can kiss, because you can't come in close contact with people like that. People are hiding behind these masks to be safe. But we were made to be relational. So what does that mean? What is that doing to us with our mental state? Because we grew up not just touching, not just hugging, not just having a relationship, but we've watched this on television for years. There are programs on TV like Girlfriends and Friends and the Cosbys. We've seen all kinds of programs on TV about family life, about friend life. I can't think of all these different programs that I used to look at on TV, about all these different friendships and family life. But it's all about, community and loving and friends and, college life. But everybody was in relationship, and even when it was negative relationships, we saw even with Housewives of New Jersey and Housewives of Atlanta, these beautiful women that come together and it look like it's friendship. They act like they're friends in the beginning, then they end up in a brawl, but yet they still are something about human beings that we feel like we have to come together. We have to be in relationship with one another. What is it about us that God has made us to want to touch? Touch is important. They did tests on children, and I remember this once when I was in college, and we talked about this. The children they did tests on in Poland and in the orphanages, and these children who were not loved or touched, these kids did not thrive well. They were very thin. They walked late. Their physical development was very slow because they were not being hugged or touched. And so it is important for us to touch, to love, to affirm one another. But what we watch right now in this shutdown is something that is really, really strange in this time for us. Job's friends came to him and sat with him, although they were trying to figure out, now, what did you do, Job? Now, this was still, I guess, they were loving him. What did you do, Job, to cause all this to come upon you? And when you got friends, your friends are not always right. Your friends aren't always straight. So, friends always try to figure out what, let me help you out. You're my friend. I want to help you out. I want to figure out what happened that you end up in this dilemma. What could you possibly done wrong that these things keep hitting you like that? I mean, that's just what people do. But, these friends were not diabolical friends, but they just didn't understand. Job didn't do anything. And we know that. He didn't do anything. He was God's man. But that's another story for another day. I'm going to talk about this right now. I'm going to talk about this shutdown. Because one thing we see in the shutdown, we've seen that there are some very wholesome families in this shutdown that was very supportive, and families spent time together, and a lot of mothers found out things about their kids they didn't know and that they loved and they enjoyed. They found out things about their husbands that they loved and enjoyed, and husbands found out things about their wives that they loved and enjoyed. But there's another thing that happened during this time too. That, we understood that there might not have been as much loving and hugging and kissing going on, and families realized, we're not really touching each other as much as we need to touch each other. We're not really loved on each other as much as we need to love on one another. But then I want to talk about the effects that this virus is having on people. Now, I was out yesterday, and we see people with masks on and gloves on. I'm one of those people. And then you see people who don't wear masks and who don't have gloves on. And it's a funny thing that the people who had on masks, I was in a grocery store and everybody had masks on this particular grocery store, mostly everybody. Wearing masks, we're still in need of affirmation. Do you see me? And people still need to know that they're being seen. We still need to speak. It's important to acknowledge one another. So I want to just talk about this feeling of isolation, because that's kind of like, I think, what's going on with some people. Some are staying in the house. They're not coming out of the house. And when they are coming out of the house, it's this feeling of nobody is really interacting with me. So isolation is there's a difference between being lonely, a person who is in a house and they want to be in a house, and some people like to be in a house and they're not lonely because they're just in the home. They love being at home. They love being by themselves. They love me time. They love that. Those people will thrive well for a while. They like being by themselves, and when they want to be bothered, they go out among people. There's another set of people that don't like to be in the house, and this thing of being shut down for 2 months is more than most people can bear. So when they come out, they want to feel like they're part of society, and they want to feel like people see them. And so, if we're walking past each other, we're not saying hello, even though you can't see anybody's mouth, that's a problem. So we're watching people feeling with the feeling of isolation, and it's a terrible feeling. So now the statistics are coming out now that people are beginning to feel depressed. So depression is one of the biggest things that people are beginning to feel now, because they feel like no one sees them. They feel alone. I mean, how much TV can you look at? And when you do look at TV, if you're one of those people that look at TV, all you're hearing is bad news and more bad news and more bad news. We are in summer with springtime temperatures. More bad news. And well, maybe it's not summer yet, but in where I live in the South, we always have summertime temperatures. And I need a jacket on today. And I know just the other day it was raining, snowing, snow flurries up north. It is still chilly, very chilly in the United States, at least in the east part of the country and the southern part of the country. It is chilly. This is not the norm for this time of year for us. So we're having weird stuff going on everywhere. But what's happening with us, with our mental state? That we are now estranged from people that we want to be around. We're estranged from loved ones. I have grandchildren who live in other cities. I would love to see those grandchildren. I'm used to seeing my grandkids. I can see them by Zoom, but I'm used to seeing my grandchildren. I can't see them right now. And so that's just, this is the state that we're living under right now. But depression is a big part. And I heard this story. This pastor's son, 8-year-old boy, committed suicide because he wanted to go back to school. He had a 6-year-old sister. And so he had somebody to play with in his house. But I don't know how much bad news this child was hearing on the news or what he heard his parents saying. I'm not blaming his parents at all. So please understand this. I'm not blaming anybody. This is just the time we're living in. This child was just acting out of this time we're living in. And his father didn't pick it up. His grandfather didn't pick it up. No one knew this precious child was feeling this way. And he hung himself. And this is the reality, not with just children, but with adults. They don't know what to do with all of this bad news we continue to hear. And unless we begin to tell children that there is hope in Jesus Christ, they don't know anything else but this is the end. Or this is terrible. I don't have anything to live for. I have 5 grandchildren that are getting ready to graduate from high school. That's not going to have the normal type of graduation. I think one of them is going to experience a drive-by, a drive-through, whatever you want to call it, graduation. I mean, how weird is that? I mean, I guess they're doing what they got to do to help them graduate. And all this stuff, like a prom and the graduation dinners and all this stuff that kids do. I feel sad for my grandchildren because they're not experiencing the stuff all the other grandchildren before them have experienced and what I've experienced or their parents experienced. This is a whole new ball game. It's so different. But we still have to give them hope and show them, look, this is not the end. This, life still goes on. We now just have to make life work within what we have been given right now. Just like Job's friends came to him when he lost everything. He lost everything except his wife. And you know what? She felt hopelessness because she lost everything too. But see, they both looked at things very different. And I brought him up for a purpose. Job's wife, all she could see was nothing but depression and despair. And she said, Job, curse God and die. And Job said, you talk like one of the foolish women. They were both hurting. See, Job, that's why God loved Job, and he knew Job wouldn't fail him. He knew Job would hold on. Job's friend was sitting there with him. His 3 friends who loved him was sitting there telling him, Job, what you do, man? What did you do? What could have possibly happened that you brought all this on yourself? Job knew he hadn't. Remember, the Bible says, if you know the story, that Job did sacrifices for his children. Even if they had in any kind of sin, he was doing sacrifices. so that so they'll be forgiven of their sins. Job was an upright man, God said. But we have to look at what's going on now. I'm going back to Job in a minute because I want you to see something about Job after I get through saying what I'm going to say. Because we're also living in a time of fear. Fear of the unknown. You know, you keep hearing stuff. You know, I heard about these, what they call murder hornets. And then I heard something about some kind of moth is coming or whatever. You know, I hate bugs, but you know, you got this murder moth or whatever kind of moth it is, and all this crazy stuff. Then I hear the stats on suicides. Suicides are up 33%. 33%. Because it's hopelessness now. People don't have any hope. Job's wife didn't have hope. Funny though, she didn't try to kill herself. She told Job, you curse God and die. She didn't try to kill herself. She told him what to do to himself. You know, you got to shut out all the noise when life gets tough. You got to shut off everything. See, sometimes you might be in a place. Some of you listen to me right now. You're in a place right now that's kind of tough for you. You may have lost your job. You may have been laid off, and then you find out that your job is not coming back. You might be one that might have got the stimulus check, but that's not enough for you. You still might have, it's not enough for after you paid all your bills. Your rent might not be enough. I don't know. You may have lost some loved ones. You might feel like, man, this is bad stuff. You might be sick yourself. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the road. As long as you are breathing, there is hope. I'm coming to you in a minute because I'm going to show you what Job did. Because there is hope. It's always hope. So I want to just talk about this thing real quick. Because we have to understand something. When all else fails, when life gets hard, God, sovereign God, is there. When everybody around you tell you how bad things are, yeah, it's bad. Yes, it's bad. I'm not one of those people who says, you know what, I don't see how bad it is. Oh, I see it. I see it. But I also see a sovereign God. And this is what Job did. Job began to have a conversation with the eternal God. He didn't give up. And during this pandemic, plague, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. Virus, loss of jobs, loss of family members, time of depression, time of hopelessness. There is hope because there's a God. I want you to think of this. Unless God show you something different, there is always hope. Because he is hope. He is light. See, Job thought he knew God. He thought he knew him. He did all this stuff. He was an upright man. He was an awesome man. He was awesome. And his friends sat with him. Some people have said, I've heard them say, I would hate to have friends like Job. I wouldn't mind having friends like Job. Friends just come to sit with me when I'm in trouble. There's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. At least his friends were there. They came and sat with him. I wouldn't mind having friends sitting with me. Even if my friends kind of read the message wrong, at least they're sitting with me when I'm going through the hardest time of my life. I would just tell my friends, just be quiet, just sit, just be quiet. Job went before God in all of his pain, because not only was he having a pain in his soul because he lost his family, I don't think he cried so much about losing things. It was his children. And his body was wrecked with pain because he had boils all over his body. He went to God and he began to question God. I don't know if you ever had an encounter with God. I mean, a real encounter, not with the pastor, not with your friends. I'm saying an encounter with God that you have actually sat back and inquired of God and talked to God. Maybe at night in your bed that you have sat back, when it's real quiet, that you've sat back and you have talked with God. And you've asked God, Lord, speak to me. Because he will. He will speak to you. He will answer you. And if he doesn't answer you at that point right there, he will answer you in your dream, or he will answer you as you wake up. But God will always answer you. If you are serious enough to ask him a question, what is this? What is this, God? See, Job talked to God, and then God answered him. And God said to Job, well, where were you when I did this? And where were you? See, God began to show Job he was bigger than his world. I'm bigger than your world. And he had to show Job this because, you think about this thing. Sometimes our pain is about just our world, where we are. My pain is about my world. My pain is about Cynthia's world. But life is bigger than my world. Life is bigger than just me. I'm not the only person in this world suffering. I'm not the only person in this world going through. I'm not the only person in this world that's here in the shutdown. There's all these other people on the earth that's going through this shutdown, not just me. And when we can think past ourselves, and we can inquire of God, and then God began to answer us. So when God got through with Job, when he got through talking to Job, Job said, I've heard of you, God, with the hearing of my ear, but now I see you. But now I see you. See, there's a time that we can talk about God, and people can tell us about God. And I can hear about God, but then there's a time that, we get to see God for ourselves. Now I see you. See, there's a time when people can tell you all about who God is, what God has done, where God can take you, what God can do with you. But there comes another time when you have an encounter with the true and the living God, that when you have that encounter with God, no devil in hell can ever change your mind, pull you away, seduce you, make you fearful, make you doubt. Never again. You won't be afraid of anything. You won't get depressed anymore. You won't ever deal with hopelessness. You won't deal with fear. Honey, all that will leave you because you know that God is God and there is none like him. This is what I'm trying to get you to see. That we serve a God who can answer us. He'll answer you. He will answer every question you have. So, in this shutdown, I want you to think. I'm turning to 2 Corinthians 10 because I want you to see this. 2 Corinthians 10 and verse 5. Before I do that, I want to remind you of this. God restored everything to Job. He gave him 7 of the most beautiful daughters. He gave him all these gorgeous daughters. He restored everything he had just because he understood who God was. But 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5. Whenever these things began to enter your mind about being depressed, about being fearful, what's going to happen out here? We don't know. How's it going to end? We don't know. When is it going to end? We don't know. What are the powers that be are planning on us? What type of awful things are they going to do? We don't know. But we know this, that we are not to worry because we serve the true and living God. So here's what it says in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5. casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. We don't worry like the world worry. I'm talking to you, church. We don't worry like the world worry. We bring everything, every time you have a fear, bring it down. You cast out every thought and imagination that exalts itself. What exalts itself above the knowledge of God? God says he is God. There's none like him. He's our deliverer. He is our hope. He's our high tower. He is our rock that we stand on. He's our stabilizer. He is God. And there's none like him. So it doesn't matter what they tell us in the news. It doesn't matter. The thing is, we stand on the rock that is higher than I. We stand on the word. Everything that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. What is the knowledge of God? It's what you know. What do you know about him? He created all. All things been created by him, and all things are in him. He's watching everything now. He hasn't forgotten you. Watch him as he navigate you through this storm. Watch God navigate you. Allow him to navigate your life through the storm. Allow him. He said his word is a light unto your feet. Let him navigate you. Cast away the fear. Cast it away from you. Walk in the power of God. Let God show you how to walk through the storm. Let God show you how to maneuver through the darkness that we're in. For there is God, and there is none like him. He will restore all things to you in his timing and his way, because he is God. So to you I say today, don't walk in depression. Walk in faith. Don't talk about suicide. Speak life over yourself. Whenever fear raises its head, speak again faith. I can do all things through Jesus Christ who strengthens me. I'm not afraid of any. Psalms 91:10. Speak life. For in Christ there's life. For you, there's hope. For you, there is love. God is love. Remember that in him there's life, and life eternal forevermore. So I want to encourage you with that. And I want you to know there is none like God. I encourage you today to be blessed in all of your ways, for God is your rock. Amen.